Hey, just a little pre-note before this podcast. I say at one point Scandinavian countries, France and Germany, and I'm not saying that France and Germany are Scandinavian countries. I meant to say Scandinavian countries and France and Germany, and I didn't want to do a random and in a different voice and then insert it, so I'm just saying that here. There was also two or three little connectives that would have made more sense in this podcast when I'm explaining key points. But I just want to say as well that I mentioned AI early on in the podcast, and don't say that that means artificial intelligence. So I just wanted to make that clear to everyone. So enjoy, and you'll hear me do the normal intro in a second or so. Hi everyone, this is Tim. Welcome to North and South Podcasts. I'm going to do a short podcast today, looking at a couple of little things. But before I do, I want to finish with the 5 self-care ideas. I've mentioned 5 sets in other podcasts, so I'm going to finish with the final 5. And then I'm going to have a little bit of a chat about finding that balance between thinking and not thinking that we need to survive in the world. And also to talk about the impact of algorithms and AI, just to touch on that. I'm no expert in that field, but I just want to touch on that and the implications moving forward, particularly in relation to, human freedom and the dangers of loss of control. First of all, self-care ideas. So it's very important to give yourself a break. I know a lot of people who are reluctant to have a break at work and feel like they have to do something all the time, and I'll touch this with the second part of the pod. But now and again, just sit down and just switch off and just talk to someone and just live in the present and read the paper or look out the window or just sit there and chill and have a duvet day and watch some TV and relax. Make sure you relax. It's very important to relax, and you need to find ways to relax which are productive. So don't be ashamed to take time for yourself. And I was speaking to a counsellor a couple of years ago. I wasn't being counselled at the time, and I was just mentioning something in passing. This person worked at a school I was working at, and she just said to me, like, it's important to take some time for yourself, and we often need to be reminded of that. Next one is to learn a new skill. I learned how to do podcasts when I did this podcast, and in 2007, when I was going through a bit of a crisis, I learned how to touch type, which I still do. Once you do it, you can do it. And I learned some Spanish, which I stopped doing when COVID came, and also I'd had a son and it was hard to fit those kind of things in, but I did that, and I started learning the piano and the guitar as well, which have unfortunately been shelved since I became a father. But maybe in years to come I'll get back into them. But learn a new skill. It's good for your mind. It makes you feel good. And yeah, you can't do everything. You have to focus on certain things, but do new things all the time. Create your ideal future. Think about what you need to be doing. And I was reading a great book by Ryan Holiday called 366 Ways to Live a More Stoic Life, or words to that effect, and the extra days for the leap year. And today's message was to do today what you want to do with your life, because if you keep putting things off to tomorrow, even if it's just a small step, and again, this fits in with a lot of like the kind of counselling of someone like Carl Rogers and person-centered approaches to psychology. Take control and do things and explore things and make steps in the right direction. So create your ideal future. Now and again, you need to review your targets of what you want to achieve in life. You're not going to hit them all. And sometimes you need to remember that it's about the journey, not the destination. And we never truly get there, do we? This is life right now that we're living. Next one's important, and it's particularly hard sometimes with family and work colleagues, but surround yourself with positivity. there may be times when you need to radically change the way you are with people who are close to you. Doesn't mean you bow down and surrender, but there might be times when you bow down and surrender just because it's for the best. And there might be times when you have to interact with people who you don't particularly click with or like, but look at that as spiritual development, personal development, and a way to become better as a person, and to not let those people impact you too negatively, because there's a lot of negativity out there which can eat away at you if you're not too careful. So as much as possible, surround yourself with positivity. And as I got a bit older, I'm less likely to watch films and read books and stuff with like really gratuitous violence in and stuff like that. Just doesn't seem to interest me excess. I think it comes with like chilling out as you get a bit older as well. But surround yourself with positivity. Don't overindulge in negative social media, negative news all the time. It is important to stay abreast of things and to be aware of things, which I'll come to later. But you need to make sure that you're surrounded by positive people as much as possible, and by positive things and positive habits. And as part of your journaling, you can factor those things in. It may also be the case that you need to cut off certain habits and cut off certain traits that you might have, and cut off certain people and situations that put you in a bad place. So that can be difficult. And finally, drink plenty of water. And in the first set of self-care ideas, I said drink more water, but make sure you're hydrated, folks, as well as breathing in oxygen, having enough water throughout the day. Not going too mad, of course, but you can get a bottle now, can't you, telling you how much you should have. But I usually have about 8 or 9 pints of water a day. I think my body needs it. You don't want to be on the toilet all the time, but you should be on the toilet really 6 or 7 times a day. If you think about it, water is providing your body with the key essential that it needs to survive. So there you go, and that's the end of the 30 self-care ideas. Right, so I'm going to talk now about algorithms and AI. And if you were given a choice between having to be exposed to random advertising, most of which is completely irrelevant to you, or advertising which is highly focused on you, what would you prefer? If you are interested in buying certain objects, or you've done a few Google searches, or you've bought something, what if social media and algorithms were channeling that kind of stuff that you want towards you? Would that be a good thing or a bad thing? And either way, would you like to be given the choice? And if you were given the choice, what would you actually pick? Where would you decide? Would you be halfway between? Would you be more towards having advertising that's focused at you, or advertising that isn't focused at you? Which is not to even consider the fact that maybe we shouldn't be exposed to any advertising if we don't truly want that, but that's another story entirely. But it's interesting to think about what you would choose if you had full control and power over that thing. And one of the things I've heard quite a few futurists talking about recently is the idea of updates for human beings. Maybe within 100 years, parts of our body, our mind, may be updated, a bit like mobile phones are updated today. So when particular parts of the body or mind are no longer working as well, we may have updates to replace them. And if that was to happen, would that necessarily be a good thing? Would we want to live longer and longer and longer? AI is increasingly making decisions for you, and we may have AI become very, very powerful in the near future as well. And if you receive updates, would you like to have those decisions made for you by algorithms or AI that you think know your real best interests at heart? What if an algorithm or a corporation looked at your general balance of behaviours over the short to medium and longer term and made decisions for you about what was in your best interests? Would you allow it to do that? Or would you say, no, I want to fail in my own way, I want to have some kind of control? So what if some of your behaviours which you are not happy with, like it might be alcohol consumption, smoking, eating poor food, would you surrender the right to even be tempted by that to an algorithm or an AI intelligence in the future? And is that a good thing? And where do we draw the line? And I'm just throwing that out there because it fits into what we said earlier about knowing when your mind is active and you're looking to improve your situation, and other times where you're looking to just relax and go with the flow and kind of live in the present. If algorithms and AI can put you in the present and just kind of help you to be happy in the short term, while also apparently considering your medium and longer term interests, would you allow it to do that? And how would you say no? Could you say no if that increasingly started to happen? Another thing which is interesting is, what if every part of our body was slowly replaced in the future by updates and machinery, cyborgs or whatever type machinery, where parts of your body was replaced as it wore away? At what point would you no longer be you? You know, they often say, philosophers, don't they, like, you've got a car and you start taking the car apart and take one piece at a time away from it. At which point would the car no longer be a car? It's interesting because my son often looks at like cartoon pictures of cats or animals or things that are not realistic depictions, and because of pattern recognition you can see it and go, oh, that's a cat, or that's a truck or whatever. Humans recognise patterns, and maybe we would still be human, and maybe we would still think of ourselves as human, but will we be human in the future if we are slowly replaced? And again, who regulates all this and who makes those decisions? Now, I've heard different debates about AI. There's obviously AI, artificial intelligence, which is designed to do a specific job. But in the future, we might have general and artificial intelligence that is far more powerful and makes more general decisions, which can then make strategic decisions. And it may well be that, without sounding too dystopian, and I've heard many utopian visions of AI in the future as well, what if AI starts to take on a role, and an increasing role, that we can no longer stop? That is one of the great fears with AI, and it's a big part of the AI debate at the moment. What if these things get out of control? As well as that, in the future, we already know in, say, the Anglo-Saxon economies, the UK and the USA, I say this as someone who lives in the UK, we don't do that well in terms of happiness and well-being, particularly in relation to our financial clout. Now, the United States is still the richest country in the world, and yeah, it doesn't necessarily translate into well-being and feelings of contentment. And a lot of that is due to the inequalities in those kind of societies. So, for example, in the Scandinavian countries, France and Germany, there's less inequality, which means people aren't always comparing themselves with each other as much. And we've kind of lost that importance as to what we are about. And it does beg the question that, as things become more unequal, and if we get elitism, more elitism moving forward, we could have a genetic underclass. You know, you can look at sci-fi novels in relation to that, but you could have people who struggle to get any access to decent healthcare. We already know that in the United States that's a big problem, and we know that in the UK the health service has been deliberately underfunded and cut to try and get people not to rely on it, when in reality, because of the cost of living crisis, no one can afford private healthcare anyway in the United Kingdom. And as we move towards non-organic human futures, or less organic human futures in terms of what our body is composed of, maybe you'll see further inequalities and the development of a genetic underclass. So you look at Aldous Huxley's book Brave New World, about the people within the city, the people who are on the outside in the wild, the underclasses, as you might say. And even in another dystopian vision of the future, David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas, where in the future you've got a heavily divided future societies where, machines are effectively like slaves, even though they've achieved consciousness, as it were, to some extent. So these are interesting debates for us to think about moving into the future. There's a great series called Black Mirror you might have seen about dystopian visions of the future, and there's an episode where people die and their consciousness is saved onto a piece of equipment, and that equipment is stored on a big machine, and these robots go around keeping the machine going, and this kind of life is continuing on this machine, like this kind of dream state or dream life that this person is living is all done on a computer. And again, that could take us down the idea that humans are living in a simulation now, those kinds of theories, which are advocated by people such as Nick Bostrom is one of the biggest advocates of that potential theory, and it's quite interesting the way he examines it and looks at it. So, these things are important to get us thinking about our own lives. And if you think of things like The Truman Show, which is a great film about someone who thinks they're living a life, but actually they're in an artificial environment and other people are watching on TV, it gets you thinking about the nature of existence itself, which is very, very, very strange indeed. So AI, there's good possibilities, there's bad possibilities. We also know that algorithms, there are good and bad possibilities. But what if you had a corporation or a future where people can log into the internet pretty much full time and can take away bad moods, can control how you feel, and help you to get more of a happy medium? How would that work? It's a very, very difficult thing to think about. And if someone said to me, you've had issues in the past with depression and anxiety, we can take them away from you now, like that, but you'll have less control over certain things in your life, what would I do? Would I say, yeah, that's great. If you can take that away from me and make me feel better day to day, of course I'd do that. That would improve the quality of my life. But who makes those decisions? What power is then taken away from you as someone who's meant to have autonomy, which again leads us down the path of whether we have got free will or not, which is a very interesting debate. Certainly it would appear that all the things that might happen in the next few moments are all predetermined by what's just happened beforehand, and maybe free will itself is an illusion. Again, that's another story. But I just want to refer back to Montaigne, who was a French philosopher of the Renaissance, who was one of the first people to come up with the idea of the essay and about giving a debate that appealed to intellectual ideas but also relied a lot on personal experiences and merged the two. And what Montaigne said, and I find this very interesting, is he said, often philosophers and deep thinkers and people who are, thinking about things a lot, they can be quite miserable and unhappy. And sometimes it may well be that it's better not to be one of those deep analytical types. And this is where, again, you need to find that balance between thinking about your future and what you want to do and how to change it, and just enjoying each and every day and getting into those kind of Zen moments where you're just going with the flow and not thinking about things too much. And somewhere between them is true wisdom and the good life, I think. But it's very, very hard to be so precise because life's so unpredictable. And in many ways, as Ursula Le Guin once said, the only thing that makes life bearable is the fact that in an hour or two or three's time, things might happen that we've got no control of. And it's that freedom or that illusion of freedom or that possibility of the unknown that really makes life bearable. So human freedom, I think, is important. And human freedom without things like equality and justice mean nothing to me. But we always like to feel that we're in control of things. But we also need to make sure that we do as much as we can in our lives to make ourselves happy and to just go with the flow sometimes. Anyway, food for thought. There we looked at some self-care ideas. We looked at the big debate over AI algorithms moving forward into the future, and had a little chat about finding that balance between thinking but also not thinking and just going with the flow. Let me know what you think. Please support, subscribe in any way you can. Don't forget coffee.com if you want to make a regular monthly financial contribution for the price of a cup of coffee. If you listen to these and get something from them, you can really, really help by doing that. Details are in the notes. Look after yourselves, take it easy, and have a great day.